Welcome to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping Orange County. With your host, Don Camber.
Hello, live from the OC Talk Radio studios at UCI's Beal Applied Innovation Center. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Don Camber with another great guest impacting our community in a positive way. Today, I welcome Citizens Climate Lobby Orange County co-chapter leader Larry Kramer. He's a former San Juan Capistrano mayor and council member. He served as president of the San Juan Capistrano Rotary Club. He also served our country as a naval captain of nuclear-powered submarines. Thank you, Larry, for being on Impact OC.
Well, thank you very much, Don. I'm very pleased to be here. I'm looking forward to having a good discussion with you today about climate change.
Well, Larry, I understand the Citizens Climate Lobby is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, grassroots advocacy climate change organization focused on national policies to address climate change. There are 546 active chapters across the U.S. and around the world. Why are you interested in climate change, and what is it?
Well, first of all, I became interested a number of years ago when I was talking to some people who had been involved in it. I realized that the climate really is changing, and part of that I found out from my experience in submarines. When I had a submarine, if you wanted to go up in the Arctic during my days, you needed specially configured submarines. But nowadays, the ice is melting up there, and now you can take almost any submarine up there without having to modify it. The second thing was closer to home. When I moved here about 20 years ago, I didn't need air conditioning. We were fine without air conditioning, but now I find that I need air conditioning more and more each and every year. And in terms of what climate change is, you know, people have known for, 150 years or so that the climate is in fact changing, and they know what has been causing it. It's because of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. It's actually fairly simple. And the sun shines down on the earth and it heats up the earth. The frequency of the sunlight is 1, so it passes through the gases in the atmosphere. But when it radiates back up as heat, it's at a different frequency, and certain chemicals in the atmosphere, particularly CO2 and methane and water vapor, then trap the heat. Now, we need some of those gases in the air. If we didn't have them, the Earth would be an ice ball. But we've had about the same steady amount for years, or actually for centuries, and now because of all of the coal and oil and gas that we're burning, is causing those items in the atmosphere to increase, and we're now trapping too much heat, and so the Earth is warming year by year, and it's been measurable both in the earthland and the sea and in the air, and we know this is all happening. And it's causing a lot of different things. We used to talk about it just heating the earth, but we found out that there's an awful lot more going on than just heating. It's actually taking things that would normally happen, like rain, snow, wind, and making these things more intense, making droughts more intense, making the weather more intense. If you've probably noticed, our rain seems to come in larger groups because of the fact that we now have a lot more warm energy, or warm, how would I say it? The oceans are warmer, and therefore there's a lot more energy in the ocean, and so when the air goes over it and takes the moisture up, it gives us much more intense rain and snow. So that's sort of a synopsis of what climate change really is.
What are the national policies the CCL wants addressed?
Well, there are a number of things. Our primary one, which is probably the most difficult, is we think there should be a price on carbon. In other words, that right now coal, oil, and gas are really not paying their fair share of what damage they're really doing. And we feel if there was a price on carbon, people would in fact not use as much coal, oil, look for alternatives and so forth. And so we think there should be a price on carbon. but all the money that's collected should in fact come back to you and me, so that in reality we can in fact have a price on carbon without impacting most of us, if you will. Secondly, we really want to see more force going in. Our trees trap an awful lot of carbon, and that's one way of getting the carbon out of the atmosphere, by having more trees. And so as opposed to the Amazon being deforested, we want to see more trees in fact planted there. And in fact, we're pushing for both trees, both urban and in rural areas right now. Right now I've got a small program going where we're going to plant more trees in San Clemente, just as a small aspect of it. We also want to push electrification, the fact that people should in fact be changing to electric vehicles, to heat pumps as opposed to gas for heating their houses. These things also tend to be more efficient and much more economical. And then the fourth aspect is to, in fact, increase the grid, the electrical grid. If we're going to have all these electrical devices, we need to be able to supply power to them. And so the grid throughout the entire United States needs to be stronger.
How can that be accomplished?
What can be accomplished? Right now, there is a number of bills that, in fact, have been in Congress right now that would hope to do an awful lot of those things. The Inflation Reduction Act put, I think, over $350 billion into trying to electrify our entire economy, if you will. Right now, you can get tax credits by going electrical. And by the end of the year, there should also be a refund money available that you'll get directly. So, for instance, if you put in a heat pump, I think you can get thousands of dollars back from the cost of that. If you buy an electric vehicle, which is built in the United States, you can get, I think, $8,500 back for a new vehicle, or $4,000 back for a used vehicle. If you go to an electrical stove, and I think the induction stoves right now are pretty great, you can get about $4,000 back for installing those. A lot of this money can come back, will in fact make it so it doesn't cost you that much. And this is all money being authorized by our government, and hopefully it'll make people want to in fact go electrical.
The thing I don't understand is many times during the summertime, they tell us to cut back on electricity. People who own electric cars, they say, don't power up your vehicles. Well, where's the electricity going to come from if we're in positions where we have to cut back at certain times of the year?
Well, I think that's a question of going ahead and picking the right time of the day to in fact charge your vehicle. Right now I have solar panels on my house, so I can in fact charge my electric vehicle right directly from my house without impacting the grid whatsoever. I mean, there are going to be times where you're going to have to cut back because we need to actually build more renewable energy sources out there. I'm pleased to see there's a lot of windmills going up. I'm hoping that we'll have windmills here off the coast of California shortly. Should be a great source of being able to get electricity. There's huge fields of solar panels are going in all the time. I just saw a solar panel operation going into India that is over 22 square miles. So we'll need huge amounts of renewable energy to be developed in order to support everything we want to do. So you're right. One of the things we have to do is we have to increase the strength of the grid and, in fact, build more of it.
What is net zero by 2050?
Well, that's a very difficult one it means really we would hope that by 2050 we are not generating any more greenhouse gases than what we're recovering. A combination of both recoverable gases and reducing our emissions as much as possible.
What are some of the actions taken by the various chapters individually and as a group?
Well, as a group, we lobby with Congress. Right now we work, our particular chapter was set up, I work with a San Diego group, and we have meetings periodically with our Congressman Mike Levin and talk to him about legislation, things that we would like him to do. We'll take a look at various bills and evaluate them, and if they support the sort of things that we're looking for, we'll ask him to, in fact, have his staff evaluate the bills and then also to endorse them if at all possible. We're also working a lot locally. We work with, there's 5 chapters right now in Orange County, and we're trying to work together. We're working now with the Board of Supervisors to some extent to get some work done. We're taking a look at what we can do at the state level to, in fact, cause some changes. And then locally, as I said, we're doing an awful lot. We try to write articles for the newspapers and letters to the editor talking about climate change. One aspect we have is education. We're just trying to educate people that climate change is real, and here's what you can do about it. It gives me a good sense that I know that something is happening. I know that it's going to affect our children and grandchildren, and we want to take steps now to, in fact, make it so that our children and grandchildren have as great an earth as we have right now. I mean, I consider that we really live in the Garden of Eden, if you will, and we need to keep it that way. I feel like we've been put on this earth in order to preserve this land, and now that we know that there are problems, we should be taking action, and it makes me feel better if I can take some action to make it better for the people in the future. We're also working on planting trees, if you will, around San Clemente, around San Juan. San Clemente, we're going to be planting, I think, about 6 trees coming up on Arbor Day, and I'm working with my Rotary to, in fact, plant trees in San Juan Capistrano. So those are just some of the things we are doing.
And explain again why planting trees is benefit to the environment.
Well, trees, if you talk about trying to capture carbon, there is nothing better than a tree. It's a natural thing. Trees take CO2 out of the atmosphere and put oxygen into it. It gets sequestered not only in their trunk, in their leaves, but also in their roots, and it stays there for centuries. So it's a great way to remove carbon naturally. Probably the best way there is. People talk about carbon capture. That's probably the best carbon capture thing we have is a tree.
What else can we do individually to help the environment?
Well, there's a lot you can do on your own. Just look at what we call our carbon footprint. It doesn't hurt to do a few things like walk a little more, to ride a bicycle a bit, to in fact go electrical, if you will. We found out that in fact that gas stoves are not as clean as we thought they were. They actually put gases into your home, whether they're on or off. And I know I've convinced my wife finally to put her fan on whenever she uses her gas stove. A better thing to do is in fact convert it to an induction electrical stove in the long run. I would encourage people to do that sort of thing.
What are the demographics of people in your organization, locally and around the world?
We have people from all walks of life. We are encouraging young people in particular to get involved in what we're doing. We're working with both Republicans and Democrats, liberals, conservatives. We have chapters around the world now in most countries of the world and are working on climate change also. We're just encouraging everybody. We have a large organization within Citizens Climate Lobby of conservatives, and they're working throughout the entire United States to, in fact, take action on climate change. Now, a lot of what they want to do, the conservatives might want to do, would be a little bit different than what our overall plan would be, but they were very much in favor of carbon capture, of more nuclear power plants, of planting more trees, and we can work together on that. So far we're finding a lot of common ground to work with people from all walks of life. It turns out that about 75 or 80% of people do admit that climate change is real and that we have something to do with it, that we need to do something. So those who deny it are in a distinct minority, and I'm not going to worry about them right now. I'm worried about the vast majority of people who want to do things and give them the tools to work to, in fact, affect things to minimize climate change.
I dare ask, if nothing changes, what happens?
Well, something will change. It's not a question of what's going to happen. I am positive that we as a people will in fact see that there is a problem and will take action. We've done it before. It's sort of like I'm going back to the horse and buggy age when people said, how are we ever going to do without horses? We don't have the material to build all these cars and so forth. And what's going to happen to the people who make buggy whips and so forth? So I think we, in fact, will see that we're going through this massive change right now, which is good for the economy. It's good for jobs. It's good for our country. And it's nice for us to be in the leadership position. I'm really proud of what we've done in the last few years. I think that us, by being the leader, is causing people in other countries around the world to, in fact, take a good look at what they're doing. Because right now, we're, in fact, trying to do our manufacturing, including the building the batteries and chips and so forth in this country. And we're making it more difficult for people outside the United States to, in fact, sell those things to the United States. So they're having to take a look at what they're doing in terms of climate work so that they have their foot in the door and can do as well as we are. So right now there's sort of an economic thing called a border carbon adjustment, if you will, whereby I believe Canada right now has one right now. If you don't do things about climate change, then you have to pay extra to bring things into your country, into their country. And the EU is going through the same thing. I'm hoping that we'll do the same thing, but in fact, what we have done, what has been passed in terms of legislation, is in fact doing that by saying that things must be manufactured here in this country. So I don't think it's a question of what's going to happen if we don't do things. We are going to do things, and I'm not worried about what might happen.
What are some of the other accomplishments?
The other accomplishment, well, the accomplishment is that chip manufacturing will now be done in this country. And now I just heard today that what Ford is reducing their presence outside of in the EU and is starting to work more in this country. I think they're building a big battery facility in Michigan now, which will be great for my old home state. We'd like to see that. I just see an awful lot going on, what's going on with windmills right now. Finally, to put some offshore windmills is a great place to generate renewable power. There's also people now realize that in addition to trees being a great way to absorb carbon, seaweed out in the ocean is a great way to absorb carbon. Tremendous. We have these great banks off our coast right now, and we need to preserve them because they absorb an awful lot of carbon, which then goes to the ocean floor and is never returned to the atmosphere. So what we're doing in the oceans are also very important right now.
So there's a lot that's going on, but you see a lot more that needs to go on.
Oh, yeah, an awful lot. But again, it's all going to be great. It's all going to be jobs are going to be created. This will be a very healthy thing. As I pointed out, the jobs are not only for people with college education, but for people who don't have a college education who need work. It's a whole new fields that are opening up. And, right now we're looking at where we're going to get all the materials and so forth to do it, and what materials we need in order to, in fact, affect these changes. What's wonderful, if you look at what's happening at various universities right now, they're doing a lot of research work to see what different materials can we use to make these batteries, to make the chips and so forth. And it's opening up a whole new field that we never even knew existed before. So it's a very enthusiastic time, it's a changing time. And admit some people don't like change, but change is inevitable. Change is going to happen, and you should embrace the change because it's going to be good for us all. You may have to change your lifestyle a little bit, but not an awful lot. It just might cost you a little bit more for what you want to do. If you're going to use something which really requires carbon, then you'll have to pay a little more for it. But that's your choice. You'll still have the choice to do it.
What kinds of changes would impact our lifestyle?
Well, right now you want a big house and heating and so forth. If you have a smaller house, you don't have to heat it quite as much. But it's your choice. If you choose to, in fact, still have a large house, that's your choice. If you choose to have a large vehicle, that'll be your choice, but it's just going to cost you a little more. You're going to have to pay for, in fact, what is happening. But I think, we're finding out right now, electrical vehicles, I love them because when I go through my neighborhood, I'm not now polluting my neighborhood with gas and so forth. I think that is great. And actually these cars, in fact, people used to think of electric vehicles as being some dodgy old car. They have more horsepower than some of the sports cars around right now. A friend of mine just bought an electric vehicle, Lucid, and I think it has 1,000 horsepower in the car, and it has more room in it than his previous car. There's a lot of advantages to going electrical. It means mostly change, and you just have to adapt to the change.
Are you in favor of solar power?
Well, yes, I think solar power is one of the ways we need to, in fact, get our renewable power, for sure. The only downside I can see to solar power is where to put it. But they've found that, in fact, on farms, it may be a good place to have it. It may be compatible with some of the other work they're doing. It's nice to have I love rooftop solar power because it doesn't require any transmission lines to bring power to the house. It's right there. We'll probably all need batteries eventually in the home so that we can store the power when the sun's not shining. But I think solar is a good thing. It requires some minerals and so forth in order to make it. But again, I think that what we're seeing is the development of solar power is getting better year by year. By the time my solar panels are not working anymore, the efficiency of the solar panels will probably have doubled and tripled since then. It'll be time to get new ones anyway.
So what about jobs? You mentioned this will be a way to get more jobs.
Well, look at all the trying to first of all, to put in all the solar installations requires jobs. To put up all the windmills and to maintain those windmills requires jobs. To build the new batteries is going to require jobs. To build the new cars will require jobs. And then we're going to have to retrain all of our mechanics to how to work on electric vehicles. We'll need people to work on the offshore windmills. There's a lot of money right now coming from not only private enterprise, but from the federal government in converting from the carbon economy to the renewable economy, and that is all going to create more jobs for everybody.
Are you optimistic your lobby will succeed in meeting its goals?
Yes, of course. I have to be optimistic because the alternative is not necessarily good. I think that we've seen tremendous progress in the last few years, and I think we'll continue to see more progress. Again, like I said, it's great the United States is now taking the lead on climate change. We, the United States, is the leader of this world, and people take what we're doing seriously. They know how we have done things in the past. They'll look to us, and by us providing that leadership will cause them to do the right thing. China is going to have to do things. Actually, they're selling more electrical vehicles in China than the rest of the world combined, if you will. And they need to, in fact, stay ahead of us as best they can. We need the rest of the world to look at us and see how we're doing and they want to, in fact, be with us. So I think that we're going to find that the world's going to follow us.
Thank you, Citizens Climate Lobby, Orange County co-chapter leader Larry Kramer, for being on Impact OC. And I thank everyone for tuning in. I'm OC Talk Radio Public Affairs Director Dawn Camber. Have an impactful day.
You've been listening to Impact OC, the only program showcasing the people and organizations shaping our community. Right here on Orange County's only community radio station, OC Talk Radio.